It's a very old name of Shlomo Carlebach we found about 2 years ago. It's so simple, just 2 chords, take it to another place. The second you get it, just join us.
Welcome everybody to another Torah Talk with Hannah on a Monday evening. Hopefully you do not have challenging weather wherever you're at. Can everyone hear me okay? Give you a couple minutes to respond. Great. Bobby hears me loud and clear and sees loud and clear. Great, great. I don't sound like I'm in a tin can or anything like that. Perfect. The text we're going to talk about tonight is, I said, from the book of Shemot. And this first parsha is also named Shemot. So if you're not familiar with the name Shemot, the English name of this book is Exodus. And we're going to first look at the name of Shemot. Let me type this in here for you. Oh, wrong key. That didn't do it. Try this one. Okay. Okay, as you look at those letters, remembering that we read Hebrew from right to left, we can translate this title of a text two different ways. We can do it, final mem, Shem, dash, where Shem is the singular noun for name, the ot making it plural, therefore this text could be called names. Shemot could be names. Or we can translate it by moving things around and getting the shin at the beginning by itself as a prefix. If we put the shin at the beginning of the word as a prefix, followed by the remaining of the letters, we have mot. So this translation, using shin as the prefix, would be of the, mot, dead. Most people are familiar with the translation Shemot as in the plural for names, because the text begins with the names of those who went down with Jacob into Egypt. But the alternative translation of shin, of the, mot, dead, also works for this particular book. Our people were in Egypt, and when you go to Egypt, this is constantly described in the Torah text as going down into Egypt. And when we come out of Egypt, we are brought up out of Egypt. The reason Shemot, as in Book of the Dead, is an intriguing translation is because the Egyptians had a Book of the Dead. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but the Book of the Dead is unique. The chapters in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the first 16 chapters has the deceased entering into the tomb and descending into the underworld. And the body regains many of its moments of speech and many of its movements. What is interesting about this is that when we look at the text for the book of Exodus, we see that we go down into Egypt. We descend into Egypt, and we're kind of in like a dead zone. We're in slavery in Egypt. We're in an underworld sort of space. Let me find my notes here. Where was I? Okay. And so we have some movement, we have some speech, but we're not really free like we were before we descended into Egypt. Chapters 17 to 63 of the Egyptian Book of the Dead explain the mythic origin of the gods and the places, and the deceased are made to live again so that they may rise reborn with the morning sun. And we can look at our text and see that, wow, hope is come to the people. Moses has brought them hope. And here they're going to live and, in an essence, be reborn. Because we went into Egypt, when we descended as a family. We are now going to come back up and rise out of Egypt, reborn as a nation. Then, when we look at chapters 64 through 129 of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, we see that the deceased will travel across the sky in the sun ark as one of the blessed dead, and in the evening the deceased travels back to the underworld to appear before Osiris. If we use that as a metaphor for our people's journey, across the wilderness, we see that we're following a pillar of smoke by day, a pillar of fire by night. We see that we have an ark. We don't have a sun ark, but we are a community. And then we travel different ways. Then we go back to the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And the last and fourth section, chapters 130 to 189, is where the deceased has been vindicated. And once they've been vindicated, they assume power in the universe as one of the gods. What we see is Moses, the people coming to Mount Sinai, they're being vindicated. They've become a nation. They're being acknowledged as a nation. Moses is ascending into the sky to commune one-on-one with God, as if, in a sense, Moses is one of the gods himself. And then we also see in this last section of the Book of the Dead the materials on amulets, books on magic spells, protection, important places, the provisions, the foods for the dead, and so on. We also see that in the book of Exodus. We see a community complaining about, oh, we miss the leeks, we miss the onions, we miss the garlic, we need food, we need provisions, we need water, we need all this stuff to take us on this journey. And our journey is both physical in the sense that we are rising out of Egypt and we're hoping to ascend, to make Aliyah into the Holy Land. And it's also a spiritual journey because we've got to leave our dead slave souls behind and become reborn as non-slaves. And what we find is a community that is unable to leave the dead souls behind and be reborn as a non-slave people. And so therefore, that's a community that in the sequel to Exodus will die off in the wilderness, and it will be their children and grandchildren who enter into the promised land. They will ascend and make Aliyah. So I'm going to stop talking for just a minute because I'd like to hear some thoughts from you on what we have here and this comparison. Let's see what you have to say. I'm hoping that this is a topic that's going to generate conversation. I want to think about it for a minute. It's almost like I can see light bulbs kinking on and off as people are thinking about this interpretation of this text. And you know, we have the issue of water in the Book of the Dead because in one of the mythologies, Isis will descend into the underworld to bring back the pieces of her husband's body, and she has to cross the river in the underworld. And the Jews, when they came up out of Egypt, they also had to cross water to get to safety on the other side. Right. The miracles, Babi says, were not dependent on magic, but they were dependent on Hashem's power. Moses did study in Egypt. Right, and the pharaoh that we believe was the pharaoh during the Exodus, Ramses II, was in the 19th dynasty of Egypt. And let me see here. Where did I do with him? Okay. I lost my page altogether here. Ramses was part of the 19th dynasty. And the Book of the Dead was very common then. Moses would certainly have been familiar with this text. And we know that Moses is credited with having written the biblical text. Most of your ancient peoples had books of the dead. The Chinese had them, the Tibetans had them, the Egyptians had them. Most ancient cultures had that because the Book of the Dead was their instructions as to what to do after they die. Now, because our people were in essence in a place of death in Egypt, they needed the book to know how to come back to life. And this is part of our story, and we tell this story every year at Passover. So I hear intriguing. What do you find intriguing, Shauna? I'd like to hear some thoughts and comments or questions. I take questions too. Have a sip of my tea. It's a cool evening here. 51 degrees in Central Florida. Okay, Shlomo has a comment. The Pharaoh, when Moses was born, believed in one God and encouraged that belief. But when he died, they went back to the old system. That's correct. Right, and there was that one group of pharaohs that came in, that one, and then when they died, that particular pharaoh died, they went right back to the old system again, back to traditional pharaoh. In fact, when Isis went down into the underworld to retrieve the body part pieces of her husband Osiris and Isis were actually brother and sister, which was a common marriage relationship in the ancient Near East, that people would, men would marry their sister. In fact, we see some idea of that in Jewish texts, because in our liturgy, we sometimes refer, I can't think of the psalm offhand, but there's a piece in the garden of Begani, and he refers to his sister, my bride. And we see that in a number of Jewish texts, and we know for us that was not a literal sister bride. We see Abraham refer to his Sarah as his sister. We see Isaac refer to Rebekah as his sister. Right, and it is possible that Moses brought this belief. But what do we think of this, translating this as a Book of the Dead? How does that inform your understanding of the entire text? Is it something that might enlarge your thinking about it, kind of thinking outside the box? Is it something that, I don't buy that at all, that's not an acceptable interpretation based on the grammar? Because remember, when we write Hebrew, there is no small letters, no capital letters. There is no punctuation. So there's no commas. There are no vowels. And the vowels were added by the Masoretes. The Masorah. Masoretes added the vowel system and wrote it down. But who's to say that they, like other rabbis before them, put down the vowels that they wanted. Yeah, it does. It takes you out of the box, Shauna, for sure. Not what my dad would say. I like a new perspective. Well, it's a perspective that makes sense in the world of the ancient cultures. Right. And Bobby's intrigued by the fact that God took Moses, who didn't have a lot of confidence, and helped give him the confidence to sort of come to life, to sort of like to be reborn, whereas before he was very insecure about speaking. Shlomo has a grand point. We must all die in some way for spiritual growth. That's excellent, Shlomo, and it's true. Parts of us, whether it's spiritual or metaphorical, there are parts of us that die off in order for spiritual growth. Kind of like the idea that, when one door closes, another door opens. Our old ways, Shlomo says, are put to death so that we have the space to acquire new ones. And the mystics, the Safed, would agree with you, Shlomo, because Isaac Luria had the concept of what we call Tzimtzum. And it is God drawing into God's self, like sucking it up, and leaving a space in which to create creation. Because if God is all, and there is nothing that is not God, then where did the space to create us come from? And so Isaac Luria developed this concept of Tzimtzum to draw back into oneself. And this is what we have to do here as part of our spiritual death. We have to kind of suck in our old ways and move them out of the way to have space in which to acquire new ones. Space is a very important concept for us as people. When we do ritual, shalom, David, and welcome, we have to leave space in a ritual, because if we fill it all up, there's no place for ritual to happen. And it's in the spaces that life happens, it's in the spaces that ritual happens, and it's in the white space between the black letters of the text that interpretation really happens and can take off. So David, have you been following our conversation at all? Have you been listening in to see what we're talking about? Let's see if David answers us. I don't know if you've gotten the gist of where we're at and our perspective on this text or not. And it used to be that when the Egyptians would bury their dead, and watch the video. Oops, I forgot to hit the record button. Okay, we'll catch you up really quick. We're looking at the Book of Shemot as an interpretation of the Book of the Dead. If you scroll up, you can see where I wrote in the Hebrew up there at 808. The letters of the text, Shemot, and then I broke it up. First is Shem, names, plural, Ot, Shemot, names, or Shin dash Mot, of the death. And so we're taking the perspective of this text being the Hebrew Book of the Dead. So if you kind of follow up a little bit, you'll catch up pretty good where we are. And so how does this, if we look at this as being our Hebrew Book of the Dead, what can we learn about ourselves? What can we use here that we can apply to our lives? You know, they talk in the Hebrew Book of the Dead, or the Egyptian Book of the Dead, excuse me, about how they would write the formulas and the incantations onto the linen shrouds of many of the people, and then they would bury them in those shrouds so they would have that text available for them. If we look at the texts, okay, the organization of them, then it's a source of information about Jewish beliefs. There's no defined order or structure to their the book. And let's see, they would put the spells also on amulets wound into the wrappings of mummies. And we see amulets in Judaism as well. If you're familiar, and I believe most of you are at least familiar with the concept of a mezuzah, the word we use a mezuzah is the item that we tack onto the doorpost that contains the verses from the book of Deuteronomy. And observant Jews, when they go in and out of their house, will reach out and kiss the mezuzah on their way in and on their way out. And that is actually an amulet for us, because mezuzah refers to the lintels and the doorposts of the house. And we call the box the mezuzah. And it's actually the amulet that we put on the door to remind us of the fact that God lives in us. Shlomo has a concept that a part of us is stubborn, not willing for change, but we have to change for our own good. Yeah, part of us is stubborn. We've got that sense of Pharaoh in us. And Pharaoh begins with the letter Pei, which means mouth. And, it's about Pharaoh, ugly mouth, evil mouth, bad-talking mouth. And that kind of describes Pharaoh pretty darn good. And like Pharaoh, we are often not willing for change, but we have to change. And when we use a Book of the Dead with our funeral rules and regulations so that we know what to do as part when we're deceased, then that's giving us instructions on how to change and what we have to do in order to get through this path so that we can be reborn. And Babi says it can be difficult to escape that Mitzrayim, that place of narrowness. Right, and Egypt, if you look at it, it is a place of narrowness. There are mountains that go up on both sides of the Nile River, and there's really just that strip of land, a narrow strip of land on both sides of the River Nile. And, it's like, there we are. It's a narrow place. It's a difficult place to live. It doesn't get a lot of rain, although in the last week or so, Cairo has gotten its first snowfall in about 112 years. So that must be very exciting for that corner of the world. And Jerusalem got about 19 inches, which is rare for Jerusalem. So, yeah. And so these are our instructions. And we know that Torah means instruction, and we use the Torah for a place of instruction. So what instructions can we take out of the book of Exodus? Maybe this is something that could be used for Passover this year, to talk about how we descended into that place of death. Because that's what it became for the Hebrew peoples. It became a place of death, of slavery, of poverty. They were alive when they went in, and alive is in the sense of, we're alive. The Gematria of Shemot. I don't know. Let me Google that real quick and see if, I got to change languages here real fast. Okay, got it there. Shemot plus okay, here we go. Let's see. Okay. Find the right letters here. Those are not the letters of Shemot. It's about patriarchs' ages. That's not what we're looking for here. But let's continue on with this discussion and see what other ideas people have about this. Let's see if it says in this one. I don't know my numbers up that high. So, I would have to research that more. I'm not sure what the gematria is. Shlomo thinks it's 746. Okay, let's type that in and see if we get something for that. See if it gives us something. Well, Bob is... Aha! Okay, here we go. Kabbalistic secrets. Shemot, the gematria is 46, 746. And whose ordinal value is 62, as in the 62 letter Yuds in the Ten Commandments, who's collectively equated to 620, which is that of Keter. Now, if the 72 names of God that were utilized in splitting of the Sea of Reeds in a complete value of Shemot defined by 746 plus 62 plus 10 equals 818. Okay. So you are correct that it's 746. Thank you, Bevy, for explaining that. And that is correct. This is like Jewish numerology. And the rabbis believed that by equating each alphabet letter to a number and then adding up those numbers, that they would come to a meaning. For instance, if we look at this name of God, get my languages back. Yud, He, Vav, He. Then the Yud equals 10. The He equals 5. Vav equals 6. And then the last He equals 5. Total of 26. And the scientists say that there are 26 dimensions to the universe. Yeah, that was not supposed to have an end. It should be universe singular. And so they would meditate on what does that mean. God's name totals up to 26. There are 26 dimensions to the universe. So therefore, on a gematria level, the universe and God are one and the same. And they would do these, and they would add up the values of various words in the Torah, and they would come to a variety of interpretations based on that numerology. So you can Google Gematria Judaism and learn more about it like that. But the basic answer is what Babby said, it's numerological correspondence. So Jewish numerology. Anyway, back to our Exodus text. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that, David. He said he is running blind, so his eyes aren't in very good shape this evening. So that could be one of those underworld places that David has sunk into. He has descended into a place of blindness, and he will now need to ascend out of that place, arise, and be reborn. And there will be some kind of struggle. Oh, you're welcome, Shauna. There will be the process of rising up is going to involve some personal struggle on his part, because David's going to have to get used to what running blind means for him, how that's going to impact his life, how that's going to change him. Each of us also have our own. This was our place of death as a family, but you descended into that dark space, David, and now you will rise out of it after a time of struggle, because the hero's journey and the hero's quest in mythology, the hero always has to descend into the darkness, the underworld, the place of death, face the demons, face the struggle, overwhelm and defeat the issue, so that the hero can rise back up, reborn in a new format. And we see this, Joseph Campbell. If you haven't read Joseph Campbell's mythology texts, read those, because he talks a lot about the hero's quest. And if we had to call for a hero in the Exodus story, it's going to be our friend Moses. Moses had to descend into that place too. He was raised in that underworld. It was mostly the royal court, the courtiers, the government officials that would use a Book of the Dead. Moses was one of those. He lived in that upper echelon, and he was already in that place of darkness. But he had to find himself, because in order to be the hero, first he had to know who he was. So as our Native American brothers would say, he went off on a vision quest to find himself. And he found himself in the wilderness, and not only did he find himself and a wife and a new family to boot, but God found Moses. And then God sent Moses back to descend back down into that dark place of Egypt in order to help birth a new nation. And with all births, we see those pains of labor. They're going to get harder. It's going to get worse before it gets better. We have the 10 plagues. They can be seen as labor pains. We have Pharaoh telling the people they will make the same quota of bricks without being given the straw. They're going to have to go out and gather their own straw and still maintain the same quotas. So we're seeing the struggle before the birth. And we have that in this text because we have midwives in this text. We have Hebrew midwives that are birthing babies. And we can use that as a metaphor for what is going on in this particular text as well. So we've got lots of juicy good stuff here. Wow, look at that. It's almost 8:45. Yes, David says, I just lost my vision during my quest. Yeah, well, yours is a vision quest, truly, because now you're looking for that vision. So we'll wait to see where this journey takes you. And so, first Torah started out as a family story. And then as a family, we lost who we were in Egypt as a family, but we came out as a nation. So we went down into that deep, dark place and came back out. And this is an amazing time of the year to read this, because on the calendar, we're in the darkest place of the year. We're in December. This is the darkest place of the year. And here we are reading the darkest parts of our story as a people. And as we move towards spring, we're going to be moving towards Aliyah. We're going to be coming up out of this dark place. Things are going to get reborn. Our souls are going to have a sense of rebirth. Our plants are going to be rebirthing and being reborn. And we're going to rise up so that we can have a joyous Passover in the spring. So now I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes and leave some space so we can see what ideas that you would like to birth out there for us to take a look at. And guests, if you would like to sign in with some sort of name, you can even just call yourself guest if you'd like, guest 1 and guest 2. Would love to hear your comments on tonight's study. I'd love to hear what people have to add to this. Thinking about us being in a dark place right now. And I'm going to have another sip of my tea in this cool Florida evening. I know many of you do not live in Florida, and you're feeling not bad for me. But comparatively speaking, it's chilly here. Now, I know we have a delay, so we're just going to wait. Now I'm going to see what our ending pages are here. And as our people cross through the sea of reeds, to a centaur. Okay. David says he's giving birth to a centaur. He's on an interesting role this evening. I always wanted a centaur. Okay. And so we have the idea of birthing waters, because you always have birthing waters when babies are born. And the Sea of Reeds is pretty much... Oh, thanks, Shlomo. It has snowed here. 30 years ago, there was a bit of snow on the orange trees. Okay, so let's see. We're still in Shemot. God's going to birth a new name in this, too, when he speaks to Moses. Okay. Our Parsha will end with the Israelite foreman coming to Pharaoh and going, "Why do you deal thus with your servants?" Thanks to Moses. "No straw is issued to us, and yet they demand of us, make bricks, make bricks. Don't forget your quota. And your servants are being beaten when the fault is with your people. And Pharaoh says, you are shirkers, which is why you say, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. So be off now to your work. No straw shall be issued to you, but you must produce your quota of bricks. You must not reduce your daily quantity of bricks. And as Moses and Aaron, and as the people left Pharaoh's presence, they came upon Moses and Aaron, standing in their path, and said to them, may the Lord look upon you and punish you for making us loathsome to Pharaoh and his courtiers, putting a sword in their hand to slay us. And Moses went back to God and said, why did you bring harm upon this people? Why did you send me here? Ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has dealt worse with this people, and still you have not delivered them. And the Lord said to Moses, you shall soon see what I will do to Pharaoh. He shall let them go because of a greater might. Indeed, because of a greater might, he shall drive them from his land. Okay, so let's see. Shlomo says I need freezing weather and snow. I had lots of that in Oregon, and I had lots of that growing up in Detroit. And Babby says I'm experiencing my own sort of exodus, and I'm leaving behind a lot of bad circles and bad influences. Okay, so they're kind of like your Egypt. Shauna says, I feel like I'm dying off the ways of my family and how they didn't follow Judaism, and I'm being reborn now following my heritage. Right. So there's lots of stuff in this particular text that really speaks to us on our level. It's not just about what happened then. It's about what's happening now. Where are we at in relation to this text? And what does this text speak to us? What does it say to us? Not only as a community, because as a community we can look at it as, yeah, these are the names of the people who went down into Egypt. But on a personal level, we can look at it and go, wow, Book of the Dead. How does that relate to me? What am I losing and what am I gaining? What do I have to lose in order to gain something else? What parts of me need to die off? What parts of me need to go down into this dark place and not come back up with me? What parts need to stay there? Because I understand, and we don't really know for sure, but there's talk that not all the Hebrews came up out of Egypt with Moses. But then we had a mixed multitude who did come up with Moses. And they also were complaining loudly in the wilderness. Okay, it's 8:51, and not to get everybody sidetracked, but as you know, Punk Torah and One Shul run on grants and donations. So we need to make donations in order to keep these programs running. It costs a lot of money to live stream these classes and services and holiday events to you. So if you scroll up to the top of the One Show screen, in the middle you will see that bright yellow pushkitin that says donate. So we would like you to click something into the pushkitin and feel it go click, click, click. And it will help keep these programs running for you, especially if you're really enjoying them. Now, Rabbi Patrick would like a minimum of $5 per person, but if you don't have $5, as they say, put a half shekel in, If you haven't got a penny, then a halfpenny will do. If you haven't got a halfpenny, then God bless you. So even if you don't have anything that you can put in, we're still going to have God bless you, because we are glad that you are here, and we hope that you will continue to spread the word among your friends and to others that you speak to about the great things happening at our One Shul community online. So now that I've done my Pushka spiel, we can go back to any additional comments that you might have on this particular text. And sometimes it's the kind of thing you want to just sit with and think about. What does it mean to interpret this text as a Book of the Dead? And why shouldn't Israel have a Book of the Dead? All the other cultures had them. We had amulets. We had people who followed pagan gods and goddesses. In my mind, it would be weird if we did not have a Book of the Dead. How do we get instructions for being reborn? It doesn't happen automatically. Yes, Egyptians did leave with us. There was a mixed multitude that left Egypt with Moses and the people. And there were Egyptians in there along with other peoples. In fact, Charlton Heston's, the Moses that Charlton Heston played in the Ten Commandments, the big movie, according to that, Moses' adopted mother, Bathia, left with the mixed multitude. She was one of those that left. Now, whether that's reality or not, the text does not tell us. It just tells us there was a mixed multitude. And that's not going to happen for a little while, because next week we're going to start the plagues. And so we're not going to get into there. Let's see. Let me see if I can find. There's Song of the Sea, which is another amazing piece. It just said, Pharaoh let the people go, because at the end, your birthday parsha is in this. Well, then, can I wish you a happy birthday? Yeah, here we go. In Exodus 12, verse 38, it says, Moreover, a mixed multitude went up with them, along with additional livestock, both flocks and herds. Okay, well, happy birthday. So let's see. Yes, you can also make your own, David. I have cute little cows in my bag that you push a button on them and the cows fall over. And we got bugs and flies and things down there at the dollar store, and sunglasses, red dye for the plague of blood. I bought ping pong balls for hail. My kids particularly like the ping pong balls. And I made a mistake when I bought frogs, little plastic frogs, because I didn't realize there was a hole in the bottom, but my kids found the hole, and so they put them into a pan of water and were sucking up water and squirting water each other across the Pesach table. They kept themselves entertained during the Seder quite nicely. And they were wearing their sunglasses. Yeah, I get that. So I understand how you think. And we had plastic animals for the Plague of the Wild Animals, and we had other plastic little toys. We bought lots of them at the dollar store. You can buy all kinds of fun things, so we didn't bother to purchase the bag. That was like more effort than we wanted. Besides, I had 6 kids at home, and they brought their friends, and I wasn't buying all of them their own bag of plagues. So, we only have a couple minutes left. And I like the Parsha of Beshalach, baby. It's a great one. So, are there any additional comments? What about from Shauna? Are you still here, Shauna? Oh, yep, you're still here. Well, David, maybe you just have to sail that boat of yours down the coast and join us for Passover Seder. We have to have a plastic tablecloth on our table because children do things they shouldn't, and even though they're all young adults now, they still behave with that. Okay. Yeah, this is quite an interpretation to really wrap your brain around and to really kind of think about how does that interpret? How do we interpret this as a Book of the Dead? What are the possibilities? You know, just like, wow, think about what that really can mean for us. How we can understand this, how we can use it to inform our daily lives, how we can use it to inform how we understand Torah. There's all kinds of really good stuff here to do with this sort of interpretation. Yeah, I think maybe we all have. My middle daughter was dating her first husband at the time, and she brought him to a Passover Seder, and we got to the point where you eat the horseradish, and he goes, well, how much of this should I eat? And she gave him a big, like a big tablespoon, dinner soup spoon thing, and he goes, is it hot? Because he'd never had horseradish. She goes, it's not hot, take a big spoonful. And you should have seen him, his eyes lit up, smoke was pouring out his ears, and my darling daughter and all her siblings were just snickering to no end. She should have known then not to marry that young man. So, what can we say? Yeah, she still laughs about it. In fact, it's not there, but yeah, it was pretty funny to see the look on his face. And he grew up in horseradish country. We never would have thought he would never have tasted horseradish before in his life. But he was so gullible. But that was the only boyfriend that we ever gave the dating application to that actually filled it out and returned it too. All the other boyfriends just read it, laughed, and chucked it away. This young man filled it out. And then he was worried about his answers, so he crossed some out and rewrote them to make them sound even better to her dad. He was a gullible young boy. So, you know, there is never a dull moment at the Zimmerman Pesach Seder. Okay, I'm going to sign out of this, and hopefully you're going to stay around, chit-chat with everybody for a while, and I'll sign out of Ustream. Now, next week, we will have Torah Talk with Hannah. I'm Hannah, and next Monday night, same time, same channel, same book, different Parsha. Next week, we're going to work on the second one, which is, I believe it's Vayera. Let me look in here. Yes, it'll be Vayera. Ah, thank you, David. A smile on your face. It's you thinking about that future son-in-law who ate the horseradish. And smoke practically poured out his ears and eyes. You could see the fire as he was grabbing for all the water on the table and guzzling it left and right. Even the Miriam's cup. So, yeah.